Good morning and welcome to today's announcement. I'm Heather Fairbairn. I'll be your moderator today. Before we begin, allow me to introduce the Honourable Tim Houston, Premier of Nova Scotia, and special guest, Mr. Geoff MacLellan. They will give some brief remarks, and then we'll open it up to questions in the room and on the phone. I would ask that I know many of you are here to also ask questions of the Premier about his mission to the United States. I would ask you to hold those until the end when this announcement is completed, and we'll circle back to those. Premier?
Good morning. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming here and joining us today. Last month, Minister Lohr and I announced our government's comprehensive plan to address the housing crisis in Nova Scotia. It included continuing the rent cap, more affordable housing units and rent supplements, a commitment to create student housing, and also additional measures to address our skilled trades shortage. The housing shortage is an issue across the province. There's no question about that, and certainly including our largest city. So the HRM portion of the plan is significant, but I want to assure Nova Scotians that there are many discussions taking place around the entire province. That said, today I'm pleased to announce the members of the joint HRM provincial task force that will address this important issue. You may recognize one of the people here with me today, so I'm very pleased to announce that Geoff MacLellan, who you all know, has agreed to take on the role of the chair of the task force. Having worked across the aisle for 8 years with Geoff, I know that he is solutions focused. Nova Scotians want us to work quickly to address the housing crisis that's facing the province, and I have great confidence that Geoff can lead with the urgency that is needed. I have always respected his commitment to Nova Scotians and his strong track record. He's a relationship builder who isn't afraid to roll up his sleeves to get the work done. As a former cabinet minister, he knows government and he knows the issues around housing very well. He'll be able to hit the ground running and work closely with HRM and the other panelists to address the roadblocks related to housing. This is an incredibly important role. It's a very valuable role to Nova Scotians. So, of course, Geoff will be compensated. We've not yet determined how much, but I want to assure Nova Scotians that they will be getting tremendous value for money when the details are finalized, and we'll be transparent about the compensation for sure. The other panelists are equally talented. Kelly Dente, the Executive Director of Planning and Development at HRM, and Peter Duncan, Director of Infrastructure and Planning at HRM. Those are the two HRM members of the panel. They're both professionals and experts in their field, and I know they will bring a lot to the table. From the provincial side, we have Stephen McIsaac, who's the CEO of Nova Scotia Lands, and Paul LaFleche, our Deputy Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and he's also the Deputy for Seniors and Long-Term Care as well. Both bring an important perspective and the ability to get things done. So this panel, the panelists led by Geoff, will report directly to Minister Lohr. They'll have their first meeting in December, and I can't stress enough how excited we are about the quality of the task force, and I have great confidence in their ability to get things done and start to tackle the issues in housing. So now I'd like to ask Geoff to say a few words.
Thank you, Premier, very much, and good morning, everyone. I'm pleased to serve as chair of this all-important task force. Housing supply is a complex issue, and one that I agree and we all agree needs urgent action. I am well aware of the planning process for the new development, and am well versed in some of the issues that can arise in the approval process. We all want to see more housing, so residents of HRM will have a place to call home. Our focus will be on faster planning and developmental approvals, which are needed for large residential projects. I'm looking forward to working closely with the HRM, my fellow panel members, and the other players who will make a difference and help us get to a better place with housing and these pressing issues in the HRM. Just a quick comment before we go back to the floor. The Premier and I are probably the two least surprised people in the room and in Nova Scotia. this opportunity, which I'm honored and humbled to accept from the Premier. I think we have a mutual respect and a shared understanding of getting things done. That's why I'm here. It's not political or any other reason. We've always worked together, despite obviously being on different sides of the political fence. This is about helping people, and the Premier has had a running start with his government in these early days, and I think they're doing many great things on a number of fronts, and I just want to pitch in and help in housing. So I am honored, and the Premier can expect my very best in terms of effort and using my experience as a former minister to make sure that we get things to a better place here in the HRM and set a model for Nova Scotia, which is incredibly important to the Premier. And it is really, for me, I think, about building those positive relationships. I don't do well in negative environments, and I think that with respect to the task force, there's important work that affects the lives of people, so having that positive energy, using the resources and the good people we have at the HRM and in the province, will get there. And finally, I think I would just end with this. Halifax is a remarkable city, a remarkable place. It's the epicenter of our region. Economically, socially, we're all proud to see what Halifax is, and as the government and many of us work to improve the economic status, to build our population, etc., housing is a big issue, and that's why it's so important to this government, and we're going to do our very best for the city, and of course it affects all Nova Scotians, and again, this is a model to work with moving forward. So very proud, very delighted to be here with the Premier, and I'm ready to get to work.
We'll now take questions from media in the room.
Okay, let's start with the most obvious first. What is it about Geoff MacLellan that gives him the expertise and the talent to tackle this job?
Actually, I'm incredibly honored that Geoff agreed to accept the role, because when we look at the number of relationships, there's a huge challenge in front of us here, and it's going to take many hands to overcome this challenge. That means working with other levels of government. It means working with not-for-profit partners. It means working with developers. It means working with tradespeople. There's a lot of moving parts. So we looked around at the list of possible candidates of who we thought could really grab this and start to get to work on it. And Geoff's name kept bubbling to the top. So I just know from personal experience in working with Geoff in situations that were sometimes adversarial, that he always has a focus on people and what's best for Nova Scotians, and we are very, very focused on people as a government, and he's absolutely the right choice, and we're going to do some good things together.
This being a HRM-based task force, would it not make more sense to have someone from HRM chairing the full?
It was actually important to me to have somebody a little bit removed from HRM that could be completely objective about how to get things done. So what we have in Geoff is somebody who cares about the province, cares about HRM. You heard his words. We all care about all parts of the province, but has the ability to stand back and really look at what's good for communities. You know, what's good for residents, what's good for Nova Scotians, and I think the fact that he resides outside of HRM but understands this city very well is an incredible asset. It'll be very, very useful.
Throughout this process and in the release, you talk about roadblocks. Can you identify even one roadblock? I've been covering municipal politics for a dozen years, and it appears to me that most every development proposal gets approved. So, what are we talking about?
Yeah, I wouldn't agree with your assessment. I mean, we have some developments that have been kind of on the books in discussion for about 10 years. And here's what I would say about the task force. Obviously, there was a reaction to the task force. We heard some members of HRM Council speaking out against what the province was planning here. We had others pointing the finger at the province, saying the province is the problem on housing. So, but when we announced the task force, we started to see some projects approved. We actually started to see some movement. But I think everything we've seen since the announcement of the task force kind of, for me, just confirms the importance of the task force. And even right now, if you look at the discussions around the city in the last week or so, you have a situation where everyone is working to keep things affordable housing, rent cap extension, and then you have HRM talking about a 6% property tax increase, that will flow down to tenants, will flow down to everyone. So I think it just shows the need for a task force that can really look at these things objectively and put people before everything. But is there roadblocks dealing with HRM? It may be the assessment of some that there's not. But certainly everything I read in the media and from talking to people, not-for-profits included, they would tell you lots of roadblocks.
Can you identify one?
Sure. There's a situation right now where the province is wanting to move people from a hospital to another building, more long-term care. And there's the inspectors are identifying little issues that I think don't raise to the standard of keeping people in hospitals. So there's all kinds of little anecdotal things like that. There's all kinds of real things like that. But here's what I would say. The focus is we need more housing stock in this province. We want to be absolutely respectful of the consultation process and all of the concerns of communities. 100% will follow that process. But there's also a time for action. And we believe the crisis in housing necessitates more action. And that's what we're focused on.
Mr. MacLellan, what's your job?
My job is as the chair of the task force, is to ensure that we are looking at all the elements of large-scale developments, why they're being held up, what's the problem, where are the opportunities to advance the different components of a particular application, and understand the complexities of the question at hand. These things are incredibly complicated. We all wish they were simpler, but again, from my time in the housing portfolio, there's a lot of challenges, and that answer is no longer good enough from a provincial perspective, from a municipal perspective. The premier, the mayor, the council, they want things to move forward because we need housing for Nova Scotians. So there is a plethora of issues inside of an application, let alone a suite of applications that are currently ready. So it's really working with the provincial representatives, the regional municipality, the Halifax representatives, to understand how do we unblock these things and how do we get accommodations and housing built for people who desperately need it. It's that simple.
As it stands, what's your understanding, I guess, of the need for housing? How much housing do we need, and just how bad is it?
Well, I think that, again, using some of my foundational information from when I was there versus to now, speaking with the Premier, Minister Lohr and his team, it's significant. And when you look at the impact of immigration, the tremendous success that we're having at growing the city, growing the region, the province, this obviously pushes down on things like affordable housing. So it's a very significant problem. I don't have a specific number of what the target is, but it's enormous. And again, while we move through from all levels of government, while we move through the process, that problem is getting worse. So I think that under the Premier's direction, it's time to actually put solutions in motion and build accommodations, build residences, build facilities that can house people. So again, every application, every situation is different. There's no cookie cutter, believe me. So it becomes the job of the task force to take those things one at a time and dissect where's the problem specifically, how do we fix it specifically, and how do we get these things in motion. And that's really the crux of it. That's a pretty general statement, but there's a lot of details inside of that work.
From a logistical perspective, then, such an enormous task, what are your terms of work then? How do you tackle this on a day-to-day? What's that going to look like?
So again, I think that using the 8 years that I've had to understand how a task force, a committee of this way would work, again, there's no one formula. I'm going to be available and here and building the pieces with the task force, with the supporting staff, as often as I have to be. I'm obviously comfortable being here in the city. It's going to require a lot of work here in the epicenter of government downtown. So that's what I've signed up for. So in terms of logistics and working with staff and working with task force members, that's going to be free flowing. But there's no limitation on the amount of work that this is going to require or what I'm going to put into it. So obviously with video conferencing and the realities that COVID have opened up for us in terms of communications, I'll use some of that from Glace Bay. But no question, I'll be here as often as I have to be, and I'm again looking forward to it and accept that willingly, knowing that it's a big job.
Lastly, I guess you're up for this task. I know you stepped aside perhaps from your political career and job to spend more time with your young family. Does it seem like the right decision? Is this something you're eager to get into? Absolutely, I am.
It's very different. As I've said, politics and governing is all-consuming, and I couldn't break away from it. This is a breaking away in the physical sense, in the mental sense, but this is. At the same time, it's a very important task. This is an element that governing requires, and for me to play a supporting role on that with the task force, I can manage it. Again, I'm not even remotely worried about the time pressures. I've managed since exiting politics very well, and I'll do the same, but trust me, the Premier and Nova Scotians can be sure there won't be any missing work based on my time consumption. I'll be here to do the job and do it well, and whatever that takes, I'll be available.
Will task force decisions be binding, or will there be recommendations to the ministry?
Well, we have a lot of faith in the task force. This is not a task force for show. We're not going through the motions here. We've created a task force that we have a great faith in and great trust in. So when the task force says time to move, we accept that as a government.
Can you help me understand? I still haven't wrapped my head around what exactly this task force will do. So they will meet, but will they be dealing with individual applications from developers? Because there's a whole city process. Obviously, it goes through the planning department. Are you the second step? Like, I don't quite understand.
So when the system works efficiently, the task force would do, let's say, very little. The plan is people would still apply to HRM. HRM would still go through their process, and then there would be kind of a file brought to the task force. This is the file. This is our recommendation, and the task force will decide they accept that recommendation, or maybe they want to do something a little differently. So a lot of times, what happens to Tim's point, I think, is maybe the HRM may say there's might not be that many no's. But there's a lot of not sures and more information, and back to the drawing board and these types of things. So maybe the task force could determine that in that situation, no, we have enough information, and here's the decision. And that decision is we move forward, or that decision is a no. But certainly we want to build housing stock. We don't want to disrupt communities. We don't want to overrun anything. But we do want to make sure that we have a task force that understands the importance of making a decision and won't be too afraid to make one.
Will the task force be able to change HRM zoning?
The task force will be able to. But these aren't our intentions. But look, this task force, this is serious stuff. We are sending the message very clearly with this task force that we have one focus. That's people. It's not politics. It's not but it's people. We respect the process, but we need housing for people in this province, and that's what our focus is.
Are you prepared to give any financial relief to Cape Breton, the people of Cape Breton, and Mr. MacLellan as a former MLA for the area? I mean, what's needed? But if you could first start tell us what might be coming that way.
Yeah, so you're talking about the storm damage, of course. Yeah. I mean, look, we have the storms have created a lot of devastation for sure across the country, but here in Nova Scotia, we have people that have been displaced from their homes. We have communities that are kind of shut in and isolated. So we're very focused on them. Somehow, I really want to thank EHS, Health, Red Cross, the volunteers. You know, we've done what Blue Nosers do, and we really stepped up to support those that need it. The damage from these storms is significant. It's probably at least $7 million. So we'll trigger federal programming. So we'll do what we can to help people return to normal. It's still being assessed, but there's been some improvements in the last day even. But there's a lot of work to be done to rebuild, repair, restore. Some of that is provincial responsibility. Some of that is federal, through the federal highway, through the park and stuff. So we're working very closely with the federal government. I mentioned that the minister reached out to me immediately for national defense saying, can we help? So we don't think that's necessary right now, but I will tell you the lines of communication are open. We'll trigger the federal programs. We'll do what's necessary to support those Nova Scotians that need it.
And when will those be triggered? I mean, when could people be receiving aid?
There'll be a process. I mean, what I would say is as quickly as possible. But I know that there's been people who were displaced from their homes. Some have been able to return already. There are still some that haven't been able to. So our main focus is making sure that people know they have a place to live and that they're supported. And we'll do what we can as a government, and the federal government will be there too.
Just to get back to the nuts and bolts of this, so I'm a developer. I go to the city with an application. I go through the planning stages. Then it goes. You're going to review every planning document that comes through the city?
Look, this is not a make-work project. We're going to, things. This is in your example, if everybody is happy that things are going, it would never get to the task force. There'll be situations where people say, look, we've been working on this. I can give you any list of examples. I mean, another one that comes to mind now is somebody that reached out to me that wants to build a unit on their property that they've been through. I think they told me 3 rounds of engineer reports and planning reports and still can't get an answer from HRM. So they just want an answer, right? So those are the types of situations that's not a large scale development, but it's a house. It's the potential for a house for somebody. That person could reach out to the task force. Developers could reach out to the task force. Not-for-profits could reach out to the task force. So I'm going to say that I would define the task force as in the solutions business. So when there's a clear problem, people can come to the task force. But we're not taking over the planning department of the city. We're not taking over the inspection process. But we believe very strongly that there are issues in delays that at times are unnecessary, and that's where we want to focus.
So it sort of sounds like developers who are disgruntled with what happened with HRM can come to the task force.
I think the people that are disgruntled are Nova Scotians that can't find a place to live. That's the people that we're listening to right now.
Back to the zoning issue. As I understand it now, the growth patterns for HRM approved building areas can accommodate 3 times the expected population growth. It sounds to me that there may be a move by this task force to increase those geographic areas, and won't that have effect on things like urban planning and transit and greenhouse gas goals and et cetera? It sounds like you're setting all that aside.
No, I don't think so. I apologize if I'm having trouble articulating exactly what the intent of the task force is, but I would also remind that there's a transportation task force too that we need to get to as well, because transportation is a significant part of housing. So if you're going to open up areas for housing stock, people need to be able to get to the places of employment and stuff. So let's not forget about that. But right now, the immediate need in this province, and certainly in HRM, is for housing. And if we have general agreement on that, then we would have general agreement on the use of the task force, which is to look at those situations where housing stock should be built and where there's no good reason why it's not, other than some delays that can be addressed or can be focused in on and say, well, how do we really get past this? What's the solution? Here's a problem. How do we really get past this? And this would be the task force. If there's files where things are taking a long time, and somebody says, look, I've been dealing with this for years. I want to build some housing. Here's what they're telling me. Then the task force would have the ability to get everyone in the room. We already have everyone in the room with HRM, with the province, and say, what is the hurdle and is there a solution here or not? And we can just kind of cut through the noise. That's all we're trying to do, is cut through the noise and get housing built. That's all. Simple as that.
Housing announcement from a few days ago. There was some money that went to nonprofits, but primarily it was subsidies for large development companies. And the affordable aspect translated into a household income of above $40,000 a year. There's a huge segment of the population that makes less than that their needs are not being addressed. And there's a criticism out there that this government is focusing on large development companies, perhaps through the task force as well, to approve these things, when what really needs to be done is there needs to be more money spent on social housing and cooperative housing to create new units for that lower income. How do you respond to that?
Well, listen, I fundamentally believe that the solution to a housing crisis is more housing. If you don't build more housing, you're not going to fill the housing. You're not going to fix the housing crisis. The very reason for this task force is to make sure that those housing developments and that housing that should be built is built. When we build more housing, we create more opportunities for people to have a place to live. That has a shift on the market. For anyone to suggest that we're not focused on affordable housing, I don't accept that. I just think it's wrong. Obviously, we want more housing stock across the spectrum. And every time you build a housing unit that somebody can move into and vacate, move upwardly mobile, whatever the case may be, you're talking about people with more income, that opens up a housing stock for somebody else. So we're focused on more housing, and more housing will have benefits across the spectrum, but particularly those that need affordable housing.
And how long do you think this task force will be needed?
How quick can you work?
Pretty quick.
We're gonna do what's necessary to fix the housing task force. Same in healthcare. I mean, we'll have an end. The end game is when people can access healthcare. The end game is when people can access affordable housing, when people have housing available. So I think this is something that we haven't really talked about a timeline, but we're talking years to reverse the negative momentum that we have in housing. You okay with years?
Yeah, I'm good with that. Yeah. We're going to work pretty quick out of the gate, though, Premier. But I think just if I can tie into that, Premier. Again, as I referenced it, I can't stress it enough, and I know it becomes cliche, but the complexities around these issues are enormous. The province puts tremendous resource and has significant policy to address and try to address the affordable housing, the housing demand pressures. The HRM has their system of resources and policy that they're trying to marry up, and the coordination has never really existed. And I'm hearkening back to my time as the Minister of Housing, where we've got all these resources and from policy perspective and financially, and they're just not coordinated. I think the coordination, it's high time that that's what this task force does. So I think that for both levels, it becomes about, as the Premier said, here's the problem, here's the solution, what's that path? It's really that simple. And again, based on my conversations with the Premier and the Minister to this point, these are the focus at this juncture is large-scale projects, but this is not about developers. This is about Nova Scotians. So whatever individual unit, dwelling, small building to a new multiple hundred in the hundreds of units. This is what this is about, getting these places available for Nova Scotians. That's it. The Premier and his government have given me the elasticity and the flexibility to structure this in the way that gets things done, and that's really about the size of it. There's no preconceived ideas about what it's going to be other than performance, and that's what the government of Nova Scotia expects. That's what the Halifax Mayor Savage, the councillors and their team expect, and that's why we're here.
Do you have a list of
take questions from media on the phones? We'll come back to the room. Starting with Keith Doucette from CP.
Yes, it's either a question for either the Premier or Mr. MacLellan. I know it's early days, but is there a specific item agenda that will come up in the very first meeting that we might all be interested in terms of what you're going to do?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go first, and then you can fix my mistakes, Premier. I think certainly, Keith, there's overarching elements when you talk about zoning and sprawl versus density, some of the permitting pieces, environmental assessments, all of those sort of nuts and bolts of your standard application. They're going to be sort of the high level sort of pillars of any discussion around housing, certainly in a task force. But when you drill down, it becomes about, okay, so on a number of applications of dwellings that would be this size, these are the fundamental issues and the bottlenecks that aren't being approved, and these are the reasons why. So there certainly is a structural conversation around municipal bylaws, our legislation, the provincial government's legislation. So those things are always going to be on the table. But again, I think it's a discussion on day one and through day X. That's many months from now. What are the issues in the moment that we can address right here, right now? What are short-term, medium, and long-term issues? And how quickly can we get affordable housing units available to Nova Scotians?
Keith, do you have a follow-up on this announcement? We'll circle back to the phones on the mission afterwards. On the announcement? I'll take that as a no. Moving on to Rebecca Martel with Radio Canada. Rebecca?
No, go ahead, thanks.
Okay, circling back to the room. Any final questions on the announcement?
Where is the... Sorry, go ahead.
Will developers be able to appeal specific decisions from HRM to the council and to the panel?
Yeah.
So how do you pick those people?
I think those people will find us. I think what we're going to see is people will reach out to the task force with their specific situations, and then the task force will. I mean, that's the purpose. That's why we have HRM and the province together. They can say HRM can explain, kind of what the other side of it is, I guess. But this is all about making sure that housing construction that should move ahead moves ahead. That's all.
This is an enormous amount of money. We're talking hundreds of millions, probably billions of dollars worth of potential development. What are the safeguards that are going to be in place to prevent corruption or an ethical review? Is there any oversight of this process?
And you're talking about, what are you talking about? Government investment in affordable housing?
I'm talking about the task force operations. When the city doesn't allow development, and the task force says, "Oh, screw the city, we're going to approve this." There's a lot of money at stake there. Maybe the task force is doing the right thing, but the opportunity for bad actors is huge in that process. Will there be any safeguards to prevent that?
I think there's law, legal situations. Look, we're focused on building housing stock. We'll take every safeguard we can but when you look at the integrity of the individuals on the task force, I believe in people, and Geoff is a person of incredible integrity. The task force members are people of incredible integrity, and I still believe in the good in humans.
Premier, one of the things that happens at the municipal level, if you have a development that a neighborhood is unhappy with, they have to work out a development agreement. There is a room for public input. If a City Hall decision then goes to the task force and overturns a decision of council, what avenue is there from input from people in the community to be able to say, actually, council is right, this does not make sense for our neighborhood?
The task force is about action, not inaction. The task force is made up of HRM and the province and people of common sense and people that understand kind of human nature and what works. So again, I mean, there's no room in this province for consultations for the sake of consultations over and over and over back to the drawing board. There comes a point in time when there's a time to make a decision, and I'm putting my trust, putting our government's trust in the task force to have the ability to analyze the information before them and make the right decisions for the benefit of the people. That's the focus right now. As you know, if we find out we need to tweak the model and change the model, we'll tweak the model and change the model. But right now it's time to act, so we're acting.
Is there an opportunity to support, say we're hearing from the city that the planning department is understaffed? Is there an opportunity from the province for financial support to beef up those operations?
Yeah, these are things. If we find out that that some of the delays are just because there's not enough staff to assess things on a timely basis, then we're more than happy to work with HRM on that for sure. Other municipalities as well. There's lots of municipalities that don't have planners because they don't have the budget for it. So we're going to work with we're going to work with municipalities. Obviously, this is very focused on HRM today. Lots of discussions with other municipalities as well. So this is about removing roadblocks. If one of the roadblocks we find out is just simple availability of resources, we'll deal with that too.
Any final questions on today's announcement? I guess we'll wrap this up and then we'll move back on to...
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. MacLellan, for your time. We'll release you. You're free to go.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, and we'll turn things back over to the media in the room for questions on the mission.
No cabinet meeting today. You'll be gone next week. Are we going to go 3 weeks without the opportunity to question ministers?
No, I think ministers are available. There's not ministers are available outside of just cabinet meetings. If you're having trouble accessing a minister, let me know. We'll make sure ministers are available to answer questions.
So this is your first trip to the States. What's top of the agenda?
Trade. We're gonna meet with business leaders. We're gonna meet with decision makers, influencers in various markets. It's about building relationships. So I'm excited to go and meet with people who and tell Nova Scotia's story. Talk about what Nova Scotia has to offer and just build those relationships. And I think I fully understand the importance of relationships, but wow, as it ever came back. I mean, once I had an initial interaction with the Federal Minister of National Defense, and as soon as the storms hit, I heard from her, and that just underscored for me the importance of relationships. So this is relationship building, and we'll continue to do that.
Any additional questions?
Premier, you talk about, well, in the release anyways, about untapped potential on this trip. Maybe you could just kind of give an insight or idea into what type of untapped potential. Is it tourism? Is it, certain material goods?
It's tourism for sure. We want to make sure what Nova Scotia has to offer in tourism, but in products, of course, our seafood's top of mind. There's lots happening in Nova Scotia. There's lots of good things happening around this province, and we want to tell that story and make sure that people see Nova Scotia as a good partner for them.
Okay, we'll circle back to the phones. Keith Doucette at CP.
Yes, Premier, I'm wondering about whether this trip also signals a change in your philosophy compared to your predecessor. As you know, we put a high premium on developing a relationship with China. There have been a number of issues, obviously, that Canada's had with China over the years, and you were one of his most outspoken critics in opposition on this. Will we be seeing you, in addition to your U.S. forays, going to China, or do you believe that the time has come to maybe pull back from that a bit?
Yeah, look, I'm all about diversification and making sure we have markets for our products that are diversified. So you will see our government focusing on new markets, additional markets for sure, through Europe, through Asia. You'll see China is an important market; it's a big market, but you will see our government definitely focused away from China.
Any additional questions, Keith?
Yeah, could you give us a little more on that? What do you mean by focus away from China?
Just making sure that there are other markets for our products. Having all your eggs in one basket is never a good thing, and we do a lot of seafood in particular sales to China. We'd like to see that seafood going to other markets as well. That's just good for the province and good for the harvesters.
Keith, do you have another question?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Moving on to Rebecca Martel, Radio Canada. Rebecca? I guess we'll come back to the room for any final questions.
So China gets $1 billion worth of our seafood. Where do you see that $1 billion worth of seafood going if it isn't going to China?
It's a big world. I mean, there's lots of other parts to Asia. India is a big market. These are all discussions and kind of opportunities we're seeking right now, and this is, part of the certainly part of the trade missions that I'll do. You'll see us opening up other markets, but it's a big world.
I just see in the notes here that Nova Scotia exported $3.8 billion of goods to the U.S. in 2019. I'm wondering what it was in 2020 if the pandemic hampered anything there, and is this spurring this mission as well to get down there to let them know, we want to get things back on track?
I don't have the number to hand, but I will say that the sentiment of what you're saying is absolutely true. That it's time to, as we get through the pandemic and we rebuild economies, get people moving, get products moving, and that Nova Scotia is here and is a good trading partner. That's the message.
Any final questions?
Can I just get a commitment from you that we'll get to see Geoff MacLellan's contract once it's signed?
Yeah. Okay. You can get that commitment, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
So a couple of unrelated questions, if you...
Sure.
Are there other taxpayer paid points aside from judges in this province who are exempt from the vaccine rules?
So just so my position is clear, I'm not happy with anyone being exempt. I'm not aware of any other groups.
And the other question was about the land at Owl's Head. Do we know what's to become of that?
Look, what I said during the campaign is that we'd look at what was signed and we'd work with what's in front of us, and I think Nova Scotians should have confidence in what's unfolding there. So we were very, very clear on what would be required to move forward with the agreement that was signed by somebody else, and the proponent decided not to. So the taxpayers of this province got out of that deal that was signed by the prior government without any cost or pain. That's a good thing for Nova Scotians. So we'll continue to manage that file with the same approach. We understand the importance of Owl's Head, and we understand the importance of listening to Nova Scotians on what they want to happen in their province. So that was step one. I'm actually very pleased with how step one unfolded, and I think Nova Scotians should be as well. There'll be multiple steps. There'll be additional steps going forward.
So will you protect that land?
I think so. Yeah, we just got to go through the process. But I mean, look, the first thing was to deal with the mess that was given to us. We've now dealt with the mess that was given to us, and we'll continue to move forward.
Okay, I need you to say that again because your microphone was dead when you said yes. So you plan to protect that land, and how?
Yeah, well, look, we've always said, it's not dead now, eh? We've always said that we wanted to really understand how properties got on the list of protected, what was done to be on that. So for me personally, the first step was to deal with the mess that we inherited. I believe we've dealt with the mess we've inherited. And now I think Nova Scotians should have some degree of confidence that we'll move forward appropriately. But we just have some work to do on the next steps around protecting and around really understanding the file there. But we had to deal with what we had to deal with. We've done that, and we'll continue to deal with it.
But the commitment is to keep that land as is and further protect it?
The commitment is to my desire is to protect that land.
When you say dealing with the mess, did your government exert influence on Lighthouse Links to pull out?
We dealt with the file like adults, is what I would say. We made it very clear that the level of consultations that would be required before there was any movement towards constructing a golf course on that land. And we laid out what would be required for consultations. Then the proponent made their decision based on that.
Premier, almost related, there was a press release and a big to-do this week, or last week, about the proposed spaceport up in Canso. It seemed more PR than anything else, but kind of embedded in that was a suggestion that the province is moving along. Has there been any change in provincial attitudes or processes or anything related to that proposal?
Not that I'm aware of. I know what they want to do there, and we're not trying to discourage that, if that's the question.
The question is, there's the previous government set up some environmental standards. Those have not been changed. No timelines have been changed.
No, not to my knowledge. I mean, I can double check.
To ask your government, as they did the previous government, for financial assistance.
I haven't had an ask from them for financial, not directly to me. I'll have to check with the department, but it's not something that came to my desk.
All right, we'll wrap things up. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.